Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're tackling a question that is, honestly, incredibly frustrating. Why on earth does society struggle so mightily to solve its most massive challenges? Think about it for a second. We live in this era of just jaw-dropping technological capability, right? But when it comes to fundamental, ground-level social issues, we often seem completely, hopelessly stuck. So today, we're going to unpack two vastly different frameworks that explain exactly how we attempt to fix the world around us.
Okay, let's dive right in. We are anchoring today's explainer in Charles E. Lindblom's really seminal work, Inquiry and Change. Specifically, we're zeroing in on his brilliant breakdown in Chapter 13. This chapter poses our core, guiding question for today. What exactly are the differences between a scientific society and a self-guiding society? Lindblom gives us these two completely distinct paradigms to help us understand how humans organize and try to improve their collective lives.
But hold on, before we look at these two models, we kind of need to redefine our terms. Lindblom makes this great point that problem solving is actually a terrible name for what we're doing. It implies a clean, definitive endpoint like solving a math equation. Instead, we really need to think of it as grappling or attempting guided social change. It's this messy, chaotic, ongoing process of just trying to convert our current state of affairs into one that is, simply better.
So, here is our roadmap for the explainer. We're going to compare these two visions of society across 6 key areas: the problem-solving dilemma, the scientific society, the self-guiding society, experts versus ordinary citizens, the myth of correct solutions, and finally, democracy and trial by error.
Let's start with Section 1, the problem-solving dilemma.
We really all share this universal frustration, don't we? Lindblom notes that industrialized nations pull off absolute miracles of engineering. We can perform incredibly complex heart surgeries, we literally shoot probes to the moon, yet we can't figure out how to consistently fund our public schools. We all want peace, but we have zero confidence we can actually maintain it. Why is our social competence lagging so far behind our technical competence?
That brings us to Section 2, Vision 1, the scientific society. This is Lindblom's first framework for how we've historically tried to fix this lag.
The crucial thing to understand here is that this model puts science and centralized expertise totally center stage. It operates on the core assumption that society is basically a giant, complex machine. So following that logic, fixing it requires rigorous scientific observation and a highly educated elite to objectively discover the correct rules of a good society. In this vision, the idea is that if we just have enough data, and if we just put the right experts in a room, we can engineer our way out of literally any social problem.
And this isn't just a modern data-driven idea either. It has incredibly deep historical roots. We're talking Plato's vision of philosopher kings, Francis Bacon's utopian New Atlantis, all the way up to Karl Marx's belief in mathematically calculated social change. All these highly influential thinkers shared this almost boundless faith in human reason. They legitimately believed that messy, subjective politics could eventually become completely replaced by the clean, objective, scientific administration of society.
But what if society isn't actually a machine? Let's move to Section 3, Vision 2, the self-guiding society.
In stark, total contrast to the scientific model, the self-guiding society embraces the messy, unstructured reality of actual human life. It completely decenters elite data analysis. Instead, it relies on what Lindblom calls lay probing, basically the everyday questioning, arguing, and experimenting of ordinary people. It argues that a society adapts best through trial, error, and democratic discussion, not through some grand, centralized design forced down from the top. And this vision has its own massive intellectual pedigree too, but it's rooted in a deep skepticism of elite human cognition. Thinkers like David Hume and Jean-Jacques Rousseau really doubted the capacity of any government to rule with perfect wisdom. Instead, this model takes inspiration from decentralized systems. Think about economic markets or the political competition of ideas, where millions of people's individual, everyday interactions organically work out solutions to massive problems, all without a single central planner pulling the strings.
Section 4, experts versus ordinary citizens. Let's see how these two visions clash over who gets to hold the reins. You can see the juxtaposition here is just night and day. The scientific society attempts to concentrate authority in the hands of an enlightened few, social scientists and planners who theoretically know what's best for the rest of us. The self-guiding society, on the other hand, disperses that authority out among the masses. It treats social science not as the ultimate final word, but really just as a helpful supplement to the everyday inquiries and debates of regular, ordinary citizens.
This brings up a fascinating concept that Lindblom highlights:
epiphenomenal problem solving. Now that's a mouthful, but it just means that in a self-guiding society, massive problems are often solved as byproducts of people just going about their daily lives. It's not deliberate. Think about it like how a baby learns to speak. You don't give a baby rigid scientific grammar instruction, right? They just learn by hearing everyday conversation. The self-guiding society doesn't try to engineer every tiny detail. It lets solutions organically bubble up from the bottom.
Moving on to Section 5, the myth of correct solutions.
The difference in what these two models are actually trying to achieve is huge. The scientific society is always hunting for permanent, mathematically impregnable answers. The idea that we can find the single best policy for anyone, anywhere, at any time. The self-guiding model totally rejects this. Actually, scratch that. It views it as a total myth. It argues that there are no timeless correct answers in social affairs. Solutions are strictly bound to a specific time and place. A policy that works brilliantly for one town today might be an absolute disaster for a different town 10 years from now, simply because society's constantly shifting.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The self-guiding model openly admits something that the scientific model finds, frankly, kind of embarrassing. Social problems are inherently emotional. Problems literally only exist because people feel bad about them. You can have all the objective spreadsheets and statistics in the world about unemployment or inequality, but it doesn't become a social problem until the population actually feels an aversion to it. You absolutely cannot strip subjective human emotion out of the equation.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 6, Democracy and Trial by Error.
Because no single human mind, or even a room full of brilliant experts, can fully grasp all the moving parts of an entire society, the self-guiding model admits that we are almost always acting in partial ignorance. So what do? We have to rely on a continuous cycle of trial and error. We take an action, knowing we don't have all the answers. We generate real-world feedback from the outcome. And then we use that messy, democratic feedback to adjust our very next attempt. We do what we've learned, and then we learn from what we've just done.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative question to chew on. We've just explored the scientific society's dream of perfect, elite-driven design and contrasted it with the self-guiding society's embrace of messy, democratic trial and error. When you look at our world today, with our absolute obsession with data and experts, but also our incredibly loud, chaotic political debates, which model truly reflects how our society operates right now? And maybe more importantly, which one should we be striving for? Thanks so much for joining me today, and keep grappling with those big questions.